And
Okay, my name is Marge, and I'm the curator of the Iron Island Museum. And we took it over in year 2000. However, the building is from 1885. It was a church, and then it was a funeral home. And in year 2000, Mr. Amagon called and asked if we wanted his building for our museum. He had noticed an article in the Buffalo News of all the work we were doing in the neighborhood, so when he offered his building, we said yes. So we never knew there was paranormal activity in here, although when I first came in, I felt someone around me, a spirit or something just sort of hanging around with me, and didn't know what it was. So I come in here alone a lot, and one evening I was coming in around dusk, and I unlocked the front door, and I noticed a full-size figure of a man in the corner in the front hall. So in order to reset our alarm or turn on the lights, you have to go all the way to the office. So I ran through the hall, and all I did was reset the alarm and ran back out. By the time I came out, he was gone. And anyone who has had such an experience knows it happens in a hurry, that you can't call someone and say, see what I saw, because it'll be gone. Another time, Linda, our president, noticed a blue and white figure floating through the front door, and it floated into this room here. And she actually came out and checked, and there was nothing here. So no one was sharing their stories at the time. Another time, Rose, our secretary, was leaving, and she looked in, and this picture was on the floor like that. And it was standing up straight underneath the tablecloth. And she thought if it would have fallen, it could only go this far, or it would have broken if it landed on the floor. So she picked it back up, thought it was weird, and that happened to her 3 or 4 more times. And she really didn't tell anybody what happened. So another time I was standing here working on the scrapbooks, and I looked over, and right by that coat rack, with the uniform on, there was a full-size figure of a man. He was as tall as a coat rack, and he had a black coat on and a big black hat like a minister used to wear. And he had red eyes. Well, that really scared me. So I didn't stick around. I didn't stay that day. I didn't go out that doorway either past him. I went around the other doorway and went home early that day. So the next night when we all got together, I shared my story with the girls, and then they all shared their experiences. Well, then Linda said we better call ghost hunters. So we called ghost hunters June 3rd, 2008. They called us back within 24 hours, and they came and they investigated the whole place and declared us haunted. Our show was on September 3rd, 2008, and we've been busy ever since. We have people coming in for overnights and for ghost tours constantly. So even before the ghost hunters came, Linda shared what was going on here with someone that she works with. And he happens to have a group of psychic investigators, so they came in overnight, and they were sitting around in these chairs here. And when they were sitting in the dark, which is like all the investigators do it overnight, and they had equipment with them, and they picked up 2 little boys in this room. And the one little boy they picked up, his name was Tommy. So they were trying to contact Tommy, and they had a piece of equipment with a red light on. I'm not sure the name of all the equipment, but they put the red light by our model of the Titanic. And they said, Tommy, we know you like boats. Would you talk into the red light? And the first EVP Linda ever got is a little boy's voice saying boat. And the night after the show was on, over 100 people came through the door. And one of them was a man who had the same last name as the little boy who had been laid out in this room. We have all the records from the 60s of all the people who were laid out in the building. And it was Tommy's cousin. His name is Dominic. So Dominic went home and got a picture of Tommy. And this is Tommy. He was laid out in his first communion suit. And Dominic said he died of leukemia at age 7. So the whole story of Tommy came full circle, and he talks to the investigators overnight quite a bit. A lot of children's voices are picked up in this room, and when I started fixing the museum, I called it the railroad room because the Iron Island is surrounded by railroad tracks, and that's how we got our name way back in the 1800s. So now it's being called the children's room. People are bringing toys in for the children, and one of the EVPs that was recorded is a little boy's voice saying, "Come play with me." And they got it right over there in that particular corner. To me, it's still the railroad room, and more toys are brought in. Every time I come in, there's different toys there. I don't know if they're moved or not, or if children are playing with them, but one time people who were staying overnight put a ball over by one of the chairs, and we caught it on our security camera that it rolled about 2 feet. And that was quite exciting, but also quite frightening to think that those kind of things really go on. So now we can go over into the military room. I had a little boy named Jimmy, and he was laid out in this room here. We had his little white casket up there. And so when I started fixing the museum, I started there, and I felt the presence. And when the ghost hunters came, we asked them to investigate if Jimmy was here in the building. And they said, "Jimmy's spirit comes with me and goes home with me." And I was glad that he's not in the building with the man with the red eyes. So I also started with military because I had worked at Veterans Hospital, and a lot of the veterans knew we had a museum, so they started giving me their uniforms. And most are World War II, but we do have some from the Iraqi War, the Desert Storm, Vietnam, Korea, and a lot of people who come in and stay overnight get orbs off that uniform in the upper right-hand corner. And I don't know what the attraction is, except that I don't have that uniform identified. And some people are saying that they're trying to get in contact with me to let me know whose it is, but I don't know if I'm the type of person that would attract that. So another time I'm giving the tour, and man was standing over here, and I was giving the tour to his friend, and he said that he was a skeptic. And I says, "Well, that's okay, a lot of people are." And after the tour was over, we came back to this room, and he said he felt someone tug on his jacket in this corner. And another time, a little girl was kneeling down looking at the pictures, and she felt someone tug at her jacket. And Linda checked the security camera, and sure enough, when she said that, you could see her head turning real fast, like something had just touched her. So there were two things over in this corner. The other day, two men from the neighborhood happened to come in, and they had lived here years ago, grew up in the Lovejoy neighborhood, and they were looking at the pictures, and they noticed this picture up here. And they happened to know actually the people who were in that photo. So the one man was standing here facing the picture, and I was standing here right next to him with my back to the rest of the room. And I felt someone behind me real close, and I thought it was his friend. So I turned around, but his friend was over on the other side of the room. And I says to him, "Were you just behind me?" And he said, "No, I was just fixing your carpet." So when I said I felt someone behind me, the man on the other side there said that he felt a chill. So that was actually three things, and we believe that in this little corner that the uniforms bring an attachment to with them. And we picked up mortar fire and gunfire in this room on people's EVPs, which they don't hear actually when they're recording, but when they download, then you can hear it. So I had a Gulf War veteran in here even before we were on the Ghost Hunter show. And after the show was on, he called me and he said, Marge, I'm so glad that I watched your show. He said, when I was in here, there was a shadow person following me around. And I said, oh, really? And he says, yeah. He said, when I got home, I thought I'd have to go on medication for post-traumatic stress disorder. And he did not start the medication, but when he saw the show and learned about the shadow people, he was actually very excited that our place was haunted. So in this area here, when our show was being recorded for the TV show, the men were trying to get in touch with my son Jimmy, and they had the K2 meter, and they said, Jimmy, are you here with us? And their K2 meter went up to orange, which is the second highest color. And then they said, is there anyone here with you? And it went up to red, which is the highest color, and the lights wouldn't stop going. And they said, okay, you can stop now. Well, the lights wouldn't stop. And then they heard footsteps upstairs. Well, there's no place to walk up there. This is a building inside a building, so all there are the rafters and the drywall. And if you walk down the drywall, you would be coming right through. So another time in this particular room, I was sitting with my back to the rest of the room and working on the books, and I felt that I had that feeling of someone real close behind me, and almost like they were going to strangle me. And I got up and turned around, and what they call the shadow man was sitting in this chair. And I could see his outline, all black, and the top of his head came that far over the back of the chair. So I had a 6'2" guy sitting here, and his only came up to there. So whoever has actually seen the shadow man in the building say he's a very tall spirit. And he's seen a lot actually in the hallway. So the ghost hunter people said that the hallway is very active. So if you want to walk out this way now. Our building from 1885, it was a church, and that's what it looked like. And then when it was a funeral home, you could still see the stained glass windows, which are still above. There's 3 sets of stained glass windows above, and people are allowed to go up there once in a while and actually view them. And this is when it is a museum. So we've done a lot of work in the building, and we're very lucky to have different people come in and investigate. So I brought a trunk load of items that had belonged to Jimmy when the ghost hunters were here. And one of the girls was going through his items during the show, and the other one had her back to the front door. And she was reading a poem I had written for Jimmy, and she only got to the first stanza and she got emotional. And then our front door unlocked and opened by itself, which is highly unusual because we had locked it. And sometimes it's even hard to lock. A couple of us have to push on it from the outside, but it was very mysterious. So now we can go into the chapel room. People have been taking photos when they come in, and then they send them to us. This one is kind of unusual as it was taken in the basement, and there's nothing like that down there. I was down there when the woman took the picture, and there's all streaks with orbs in every streak. This one was taken when we had a group of women investigators, and that was taken towards the back of our building. And that's one of the investigators, and that's who showed up in her picture. And that's similar to the shadow man I saw in the front hall, except the one in the front hall was bent over. So many shadow people and orbs show up in the various pictures, and we like people to send them to us if they get something unusual. Well, one very strange thing happened to me. I was in the kitchen one day, and I had my back to the rest of the building, and I heard someone say, "Hello, Marge." And it was a man's voice, a very nice man's voice. And so Linda had come in. I said, "Is there anyone else here with you?" And she said, "No, I just came in." So I told her what happened, and then you just get on with your life. And then I was given a tour one day to a couple from Toronto. And we were in this room, and they were videotaping the whole tour. And I said, "I think I just heard my name called now." And they said, "Oh, really?" And I said, "Yeah." So they came back a few weeks later, and they had downloaded their video, and when I say I heard my name called, you can hear that same voice on their video say, "Hello, Marge," which is highly unusual, so I'm told. But like I said, I was never into any of this paranormal thing before, so it's still new to us, although things have been happening like for at least 4 years now, maybe even a little bit longer. So when people take their photos, in the altar, they get faces a lot. That altar is from a church from 1896. It did not belong to this church. And the lady said she would donate the altar to us if we would help her save her building, which was an old wooden church. So I went to court with her. We saved her building. And we got the altar installed. It's the only place in the building that would fit. And 2 weeks after we got the altar installed, someone burned her house in an arson fire, her church. So the church was on Longnecker Street, like a block from where I live. And I was very sad because we were trying to get that church preserved. So now we'll go in this room here. This is where the ghost hunters came when they heard the footsteps upstairs. And Grant went up first, and he saw someone walk in front of the stained glass windows. And then he saw something coming at him real fast, so he tried to get down in a hurry, and he caught his jacket. So then Jason was standing here, and they both heard footsteps up there. Well, there's no place to walk up there at all. So then Jason went up, and he came down in a hurry, and then they sent one of their other crew members up, and he was teasing the spirits, and he got an EVP that said, "Leave me alone." And that was very loud and clear. And we were all sitting out in the altar room watching a big screen TV. And people said, "Marge, go and close that door." And I said, "I'm not going near that room." But a lot of people get the chills in this room. Some people get the goosebumps so bad the hair stands up on end. And it's mostly from that corner there. So whatever it is about this room, it's, I don't know if it's because it's smaller or because it's dark. It's just that, or there's a hole that you can go up into what they call the attic, but it is very, very weird. People are always anxious to go up the ladder and look in, but like I said, they can't really go into the attic itself. Now, the last funeral director did not embalm here. He would have the people embalmed elsewhere, bring them through the back hall and through this long hallway. And a lot of people get the chills and so forth and some sort of feeling when they're walking through that hallway. It's like a suffocating feeling. But they'd go down there, and then he would take them into one of the viewing rooms. So now we have a low board at the end of the staircase, if you just be careful when you make the turn. I don't really like the basement very much. given a tour one day, and a man came through the door, and out of the clear blue, he said, "There's so many doors and windows closed up in here that the spirits don't know where they are." Well, in fact, we've been finding doors down here in the crawl space. This is from the old church, and we found stained glass windows that belong to the church, and we found doors and windows that are actually closed in between the brick and the plasterboard throughout the whole building. In fact, in that new room upstairs, there actually are two windows on a window on either side that's boarded over. When we first took over the building and came down the basement, there was a room here, and there was a doorway here, and that's what was left to the sink, so it was a bathroom. The toilet tank was in the wall, there was no toilet, but above there was a shelf containing 25 cans of cremated remains. And they all had the names on the boxes, and one of the boxes and cans was open, and we actually saw the ashes. And there was 3 skittish ladies coming down and inspecting their new building, and to find that, it was really shocked us. So we kept track of all the names, and the funeral director came and picked them up the next day and said they had to be buried at sea or in a common grave. After our show was on, we got calls from a couple people who wanted to know if it was their relatives. And sure enough, 2 of them were, so we referred them to the funeral director, and they had to take care of it from there. But back here is where that picture was taken with the streaks in the orange. The lady was standing right here, and she took the photo, and as you can see, there's nothing like that down here. And it's just a very old basement, just like probably the basement in a lot of homes around here. But it seems to attract a lot of paranormal activity. As recently as a few days ago, maybe even yesterday, there were people that thought that there was a man buried beneath the floor in the basement. And 5 different times, 5 different groups of women investigators were down here, and they're attracted to this wall. And they put their hands on the wall, and they say there's little girls buried in there. One of them got so upset, she got the goosebumps and the hair standing up, and she started to cry. She was very emotional. She ran upstairs and said, "We have to knock that wall out." And I said, "Well, that's not going to happen." And then Linda and our secretary, Rose, started to knock the wall out. So I don't know what you can get in there, but all I see is dirt. But then I'm thinking maybe years ago it was an Indian burial ground, or maybe there had been a cemetery connected with the church. Like you see on the old westerns, all the little churches have cemeteries connected with them. But I'll tell you, it's strange, the feeling, people actually get sick to their stomach. Twice just yesterday. They got, 2 women got sick to their stomach in a spot over there. So now we have another opening. People say a coal bin, but it's too far away from the side of the building to be a coal bin. And some people see another room way over to the right. And I'm not sure what that would be, but I have to get someone in here to investigate beyond these walls, because too many people are seeing things and noticing different things that are stored back there. But that'll happen eventually. When people come in and stay overnight, they sit around here and they investigate in the dark. And we had one group in here, they were videotaping their whole session. One woman felt someone sit on her lap. And all the members were over here. And And then on their video, when they download it, you can see a face peeking out from behind the furnace and peeking back in, or going back in real fast. And they were so upset when they saw that, because they said all their members were on this side of the furnace, and when they saw that, it was like they were shocked. And we're shocked every time we watch it, actually. So now over here is the one that most people are excited or upset about. Depends. This is the place where we are finding old doors and the stained glass windows from the original church. It's actually quite exciting to find things from the old church, and we found a few other items which we have in the case upstairs. But in this area here, two men from Indiana were here and they took pictures and they got faces in this area the same day. And then where people are getting outlines of skulls, and someone got a baby skull. Now, in the 1960s, we have all the records from when it was a funeral home, and there were so many children laid out in this building that we're more and more finding traces of children who were in this building, and they all died of different causes. We thought maybe it might have been an epidemic or something at the time, but they're all different causes. So my son actually was one of those that was buried from here, and he had pneumonia, and the other boy had leukemia, and someone, so it just goes on and on. This particular thing here, it looks to me like a huge skull from an animal or something, but it's just the way the formation of the dirt or the stones is. But that goes way back, and I'm sure there's going to be lots more things found when I get those certain people to do the investigating throughout the whole basement. It all seems like dirt, but then there's also this odd formation of stone, which has to be like a support for the building. Someone says it's limestone.
Yeah, right? Kind of just the exact opposite from being upstairs. Upstairs was super hot. I actually began to sweat. Now down here, of course it's a basement. Okay. Is there anybody down here in the basement who would like to communicate with us tonight? Whether it be this curious spirits that have been following us around, at least we kind of hope they were all night, or maybe someone that dwells down here. The teddy bear here has the K2 meter. So we're going to approach the teddy bear and light the lights for him, just to show that you're down here with us. So we don't, play too many more games. Just make yourself known. That's all we're asking. Now this following clip, I ask who's messing with my camera. Now you're going to clearly hear a voice say, "I'm lost." This sounds like a male voice, and it could be Edgar.
The shaking that we have felt is when the furnace kicks off. It kicks off and shakes the floor.
Yeah, you can feel it.
That explains.
Edgar, were you messing with my video camera? Was that one of the kids? Now, this following clip took place in the chapel room. Now, what you're going to hear in this case is a distinct voice telling us to trust Carney. Check it out.
afterthought because this was donated to Iron Island Museum. If you
Okay.
read the plaque up there, so this actually was never a chapel, which is kind of interesting.
It was probably just another funeral parlor. I mean, another.
Exactly.
Okay, in this clip, we're investigating the attic, which is Edgar's favorite hangout. Now, what you're going to hear is your classic Get Out VVP. So, check this one out. Yeah, there really wasn't.
We just never got it here.
Yeah, this is like.
Alright, guys, if you're not gonna show, you can at least make a noise and tell me, like, okay, go. You know?
Yeah, give us a reason to leave.
And don't make me go through the floor for that way.
It's okay.
Okay, this following piece of footage is very intriguing. It was taken in the seance room. Now, I want you to pay attention to Felina's lap area where she has the camera. You're going to see her go to fiddle with her camera, and she's going to make a hand gesture, something along the lines of this. Now, what manifests is pretty incredible. You're going to see an orb actually form itself and rise to the ceiling. Now, the windows were closed, the heat wasn't on. It was a perfectly controlled scenario, so there was no good explanation for this orb. But go ahead and check out this piece of footage. Hey Edgar, are you up that ladder? Why don't you come on down the ladder? Okay, we've come to the conclusion of another episode of Western Door Paranormal. This was an epic episode. It was really fun for everybody, and we really appreciate the staff at Iron Island Museum allowing us to come in there and do the investigation. We got a lot of footage, we got a lot of VVPs. So I think beyond any shadow of a doubt, the Iron Island Museum is declared definitely haunted. We also had a lot of personal experiences that we couldn't explain during the footage that, of course, that we didn't get on camera.